The sun hung lazily over Springfield, casting its golden rays on the familiar chaos of the town. At Springfield Elementary, Lisa Simpson sat hunched over a microscope in the science lab, her brow furrowed in concentration. Her latest project was a study on the ecological impact of pollution in Lake Springfield, and she'd collected soil samples near the water's edge earlier that week. As she peered through the lens, something unusual caught her eye, a cluster of glowing greenish spores shimmering in the Petri dish. "Fascinating," she murmured, scribbling notes in her journal. "This doesn't match any fungal species I've studied." Lisa's curiosity was piqued, but the school day was far from calm. Across the hall, Bart and Milhouse were plotting their next prank. Bart, ever the instigator, had snuck into the science lab during lunch to borrow some supplies for a scheme. When he spotted Lisa's glowing Petri dish, his eyes lit up with mischief. "Yo, Milhouse, check this out. Looks like alien snot." He cackled, poking at the dish with a pencil. Milhouse, nervously adjusting his glasses, giggled. "Let's hide some in Martin's backpack. He'll freak." Without a second thought, Bart scooped a tiny bit of the fungus onto a piece of paper and slipped it into Martin Prince's bag, chuckling at the thought of the nerd's reaction. By the next morning, the consequences of Bart's prank began to surface. Martin Prince, usually pristine and composed, was scratching his arms furiously during math class. Red, blotchy patches spread across his skin, and his eyes were watery. "This is most irregular," he whined, drawing the attention of Sherry and Terry, who sat nearby. The twins exchanged glances, then scratched their own necks, noticing similar rashes. Lisa, seated a few rows back, narrowed her eyes. "That's not just allergies," she muttered, her mind racing back to the glowing fungus. At recess, Lisa cornered Martin and examined his rash. "When did this start?" she asked, her tone serious. Martin, still scratching, stammered, "This morning, I found some weird green stuff in my backpack, but I thought it was just chalk dust." Lisa's heart sank. She dragged Martin to the nurse's office, where Nurse Doris was already dealing with Sherry, Terry, and Nelson, all complaining of itching and redness. "This is starting to look like an outbreak," Lisa said, her voice tinged with worry. She tried to explain her concerns to Principal Skinner, but he waved her off, adjusting his tie nervously. "Lisa, it's probably just a bad batch of cafeteria. Ecos, let's not start a panic." Miss Hoover, overhearing, nodded dismissively. "Kids get rashes all the time. Stop overthinking it, Lisa." Frustrated but undeterred, Lisa returned home that evening to find another troubling development. Bart, oblivious to the chaos he'd sparked, had brought a small piece of the fungus home as a souvenir and hidden it in Lisa's room, thinking it'd annoy her. By dinner time, Homer was scratching his bald scalp, muttering, "Stupid, itchy head. Must be that new shampoo Marge bought." Marge, too, was rubbing her arms, her usual calm demeanor fraying. "Homer, this doesn't feel normal," she said, frowning. Lisa, setting the table, froze. "Mom, Dad, when did this start?" she asked, her voice sharp. Homer shrugged. "Couple hours ago. Why, you got a cream or something?" Lisa's eyes widened. The fungus was spreading fast. That night, Lisa stayed up late, her room lit by the glow of her laptop. She scoured scientific journals and online databases, searching for anything that matched the fungus's description. She found references to rare pathogenic fungi that could cause skin irritation and rapid spread, but nothing quite fit the glowing, aggressive nature of her sample. "This could be a mutation," she whispered, her heart pounding. She knew she needed help. Someone with access to better equipment. The only person in Springfield who might take her seriously was Professor Frink, the town's eccentric scientist. The next morning, Lisa biked to Frink's laboratory, clutching a sealed container with a sample of the fungus. Frink, surrounded by whirring gadgets and bubbling beakers, adjusted his glasses as Lisa explained her findings. "A glowing fungus, you say? Glavin, that sounds like a potential biohazard," he exclaimed, immediately setting up his spectrometer. He promised to analyze the sample, but warned that identifying its properties could take days. In the meantime, young lady, avoid contact with that substance. It could be more dangerous than a quantum destabilizer in a microwave. Lisa nodded, her resolve strengthening. She had to act fast. As she left Frink's lab, Lisa's mind raced. The fungus was no longer just a school problem. It was in her home, her family, and possibly spreading through Springfield. She thought of Bart's prank and Martin's rash, piecing together the chain of events. Bart, she muttered, clenching her fists. She'd have to confront him, but more importantly, she needed to warn the town. The problem was, no one seemed to believe her. Skinner, Hoover, even her parents had brushed her off. Lisa felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. If she didn't stop this fungus, who would? Back at school, the situation worsened. More students were absent, and those present were scratching and complaining. Even groundskeeper. Willie was seen muttering curses as he scratched his beard, his skin blotchy. Lisa overheard whispers in the halls, kids talking about the itch like it was a ghost story. She knew she couldn't wait for Frink's results. She had to find the source of the fungus and stop its spread before it was too late. But as she sat in the library poring over her notes, a chilling thought struck her. What if the fungus wasn't just in the soil? What if it was in the air, the water, or worse, mutating inside its hosts? Lisa shuddered, her determination hardening. This was her fight now, and she wouldn't back down. Springfield was unraveling. The strange, glowing fungus that Lisa Simpson had discovered was no longer a curiosity confined to Petri dishes or school pranks. It was a full-blown crisis. By Monday morning, the halls of Springfield Elementary were half empty, with students and teachers alike succumbing to the mysterious infection. Lisa watched in horror as Homer, now sporting patchy bald spots and a frantic itch, scratched his scalp raw at the breakfast table. Marge's usual beehive hairdo was fraying, her arms covered in red welts, and she coughed into a napkin, her eyes weary. Even Bart, the prankster who'd unwittingly spread the fungus, was rubbing his swollen, puffy eyes, muttering, "This sucks worse than detention." Lisa's warnings had gone unheeded, and now the consequences were undeniable. At school, the situation was dire. Groundskeeper Willie, his beard now speckled with white mold-like growths, was bellowing Scottish curses as he swept the halls. Nelson Muntz, usually tough as nails, was slouched in a corner, scratching his arms until they bled. Lisa overheard Janie and Ralph Wiggum complaining of nausea, their skin blotchy and pale. "This isn't just a rash anymore," Lisa whispered to herself, clutching her notebook. She'd spent the weekend emailing Professor Frink, who was still analyzing the fungus sample. His latest message was grim. Preliminary tests suggest a multicellular pathogenic fungus, Glavin. Highly contagious, possibly mutated by environmental toxins. More data needed. Lisa knew she couldn't wait for his results. Springfield was running out of time. The tipping point came that afternoon when Mayor Quimby, sweating profusely on live TV, declared a state of emergency. Citizens of Springfield, due to this, itchy situation, we're instituting a quarantine," he stammered, scratching his neck. "All infected persons are to report to Springfield General Hospital immediately." The announcement sent the town into a frenzy. Moe's Tavern closed its doors, the Quickie Mart ran out of calamine lotion, and Chief Wiggum's police force struggled to maintain order as panicked residents hoarded supplies. The hospital, under Dr. Hibbert's strained leadership, converted its cafeteria into an isolation ward for the infected. Lisa watched as Homer and Marge were escorted there, her heart sinking. "I should have stopped this sooner," she muttered, guilt gnawing at her. Determined to find answers, Lisa biked back to Professor Frink's lab after school. The scientist was surrounded by blinking monitors and bubbling test tubes, his hair more frazzled than usual. "Lisa, you were right to be concerned," he exclaimed, pointing to a screen displaying the fungus's cellular structure. This is no ordinary mold. It's a mutation, likely triggered by radioactive waste in Lake Springfield. It thrives on soft tissue and spreads through skin contact. Lisa's eyes widened. Radioactive waste. That sounds like something from... She trailed off, her mind flashing to the town's biggest polluter, the Springfield nuclear power plant. Fueled by suspicion, Lisa marched to the power plant, dodging crowds of scratching townsfolk. She demanded to see Mr. Burns, who was lounging in his office, untouched by the chaos. "What's this about a fungus, little girl?" he sneered, stroking his pet vulture. Lisa laid out her evidence, accusing the plant of dumping toxic waste into the lake. Burns chuckled darkly. "Waste? Nonsense. That's just nutrient-rich runoff." But his shifty eyes betrayed him. In fact, this fungus could be profitable. Imagine fungal-based cleaning products, he mused, rubbing his hands. Lisa stormed out, furious. Burns wasn't just negligent, he was planning to exploit the crisis. Meanwhile, a strange development shook the town. Ned Flanders, the ever-cheerful neighbor who'd been volunteering at the hospital, vanished. He'd been tending to the infected, offering prayers and homemade soup, when he was last seen wandering toward the outskirts of town, mumbling incoherently. Rumors spread that he'd been taken by the itch, with some claiming they'd seen him near the woods, his skin pale and his eyes vacant. Lisa overheard Marge from her hospital bed fretting about Ned. "He was such a good man," Marge coughed. Lisa's resolve hardened. She had to find a solution, not just for her family, but for everyone. Back at home, Lisa pored over her research, her room a mess of books and printouts. She stumbled across a tattered library book about Springfield's history, which mentioned a 19th century outbreak of a glowing plague that caused itching and delirium. The book hinted at a cure, a rare herb, the Springfield sage, found only in the hills outside town. This could be it, Lisa gasped, hope flickering. But the hills were treacherous, and with the town in chaos, she'd need help to search for it. As night fell, Springfield descended into pandemonium. Looters raided the comic book guys. A store, Apu locked himself in the Quickie Mart, and Krusty the Clown broadcast a panicked PSA, scratching his face on air. Lisa, sitting alone in her room, felt the weight of the crisis. The fungus was spreading faster than anyone could control, and Burns's negligence had made it worse. She clutched the history book, her mind racing. "If that herb is real, I'm going to find it," she vowed. But first, she'd need to rally her allies, Bart, Frink, maybe even Marge and Homer, if they could recover. The fight against the fungus was just beginning, and Lisa knew it was up to her to lead the charge. Springfield teetered on the edge of collapse. The glowing fungus had turned the town into a scratching, coughing mess, with half the population confined to the makeshift isolation ward at Springfield General Hospital. Lisa Simpson, armed with a clue from a dusty history book about a rare herb called Springfield sage, was determined to end the crisis. The herb, rumored to have cured a similar outbreak centuries ago, grew in the treacherous hills outside town. With time running out, Lisa knew she couldn't wait for Professor Frink's lab results or for the adults to take her seriously. She had to act now. Lisa enlisted Bart, who, despite lingering itchiness, was eager to redeem himself after sparking the outbreak. "All right, Liz, I messed up," he admitted, rubbing his still puffy eyes. "Let's find this weed and save the day." Professor Frink, frazzled but enthusiastic, agreed to join them, packing a backpack with scientific gear and muttering about Glavin-level bioremediation. The trio set off at dawn, hiking toward the rugged Springfield hills, the town behind. Then was a ghost of itself. Moe's Tavern was boarded up, the Quickie Mart was looted, and Chief Wiggum's police cruiser sat abandoned, its siren wailing faintly. Their expedition was barely underway when trouble struck. Mr. Burns, having caught wind of Lisa's plan, saw the Springfield sage as a potential goldmine for his shady enterprises. Smithers, that herb could be the key to a fungal empire. He cackled, dispatching his goons to intercept the group. As Lisa, Bart, and Frink navigated a rocky trail, Burns's henchmen appeared, led by a sneering Smithers. "Hand over any herbs you find or else," Smithers barked. Bart, quick on his feet, rigged a prank with a slingshot and a pile of loose gravel, sending the goons tumbling down a slope. "Eat dirt, suits," he yelled, high-fiving Lisa. Frink, meanwhile, distracted Smithers with a lecture on fungal taxonomy, buying them time to escape. After hours of searching, the trio reached a hidden cave mentioned in the history book. Inside, they found clusters of Springfield sage, small silvery plants glowing faintly in the dark. Lisa's heart leaped. "This is it!" she exclaimed, carefully collecting samples. Frink ran a quick scan with his portable spectrometer, confirming the herb's antifungal properties. "It's a natural inhibitor of the fungus's cell growth, Glavin," he said, adjusting his glasses. But their victory was short-lived. A low groan echoed from deeper in the cave. Lisa froze, her flashlight landing on a familiar figure. Ned Flanders, his skin pale and covered in white mold-like patches, his eyes glassy. "Hi, Diddley. Help," he mumbled, collapsing. Back in town, Lisa and Frink worked feverishly in his lab to synthesize an antidote. Using the Springfield sage, they created a green, syrupy solution and tested it on a lab rat Frink had infected with the fungus. Within hours, the rat's fur regained its color, and its frantic scratching stopped. "It works!" Lisa cheered. With Dr. Hibbert's help, they scaled up production, converting the hospital's kitchen into a makeshift pharmacy. Volunteers, including a recovering Marge and Homer, distributed the antidote to the infected. Homer, still scratching his scalp, gulped the syrup and burped. "Tastes like Duff, but itchier," he said, grinning as his welts faded. The antidote worked miracles. Patients in the hospital began to recover, their rashes vanishing and their energy returning. Lisa and Bart ventured to the cave to rescue Ned, administering the antidote on the spot. Ned blinked, his cheerful demeanor slowly returning. "Well, gosh, Lisa, you're a real miracle worker," he said, explaining how he'd been drawn to the cave by a strange urge to find the herb, only to get lost and overwhelmed by the infection. Lisa smiled, relieved, but her mind was already on the bigger picture, preventing this from happening again. Back at Springfield Elementary, Lisa organized an assembly to share what she'd learned. Standing at the podium, she addressed the town, her voice steady. This fungus wasn't just a random plague. It was caused by pollution from the nuclear power plant. We have to hold Mr. Burns accountable and protect our environment. The crowd cheered, though Burns, skulking in the back, muttered about meddling kids. Mayor Quimby, eager to save face, announced stricter regulations on the plant, earning a reluctant nod from Lisa. That evening, the Simpsons gathered on their couch, the town slowly returning to its chaotic normalcy. Homer, now itch-free, hugged Lisa tightly. "I'm never doubting you again, kiddo," he said before adding, "unless it's about broccoli." Marge, her hair restored, smiled proudly. Bart, slouched beside them, tossed Lisa a half-hearted apology. "Sorry for the whole fungus prank. Oh, thing, you're pretty cool, Liz." Lisa rolled her eyes but grinned. In a quiet moment, Lisa stepped into the backyard and planted a few sprigs of Springfield sage in the garden. "Just in case," she whispered, gazing at the stars. Springfield was safe for now, but Lisa knew her fight for a cleaner, safer town was far from over. As she headed inside, Krusty's voice blared from the TV, announcing a new itch-free Springfield special. Lisa chuckled. Some things never changed.